Growing up in a devout Catholic family, I was instilled with values of kindness and selflessness, always eager to lend a helping hand. Little did I know that this very mindset, meant to guide me toward compassion, would become a vulnerability later in life. University introduced me to a world far different from the sheltered confines of my upbringing. Amidst a group of friends, I found myself drawn into a relationship with someone who seemed caring and empathetic on the surface, but who would ultimately reveal a darker side. Living with this covert narcissist turned out to be a profound and harrowing experience, one that fundamentally altered my perception of relationships and society at large. What began as a hopeful living arrangement quickly descended into a nightmare of manipulation, gaslighting, and isolation. As I reflect on those tumultuous years, I've come to realize how my upbringing inadvertently prepared me for such abuse. Moreover, I've begun to see the broader societal patterns, how religious institutions and societal norms often perpetuate dynamics of scapegoating and sacrifice. This journey has not been easy. It's a story of how innocence and goodwill can be twisted into vulnerabilities, and how manipulative individuals can exploit these traits for their own gain. It's a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play in both personal relationships and the world at large. Join me as I share my journey of navigating through the darkness of narcissistic abuse, finding resilience in unexpected places, and ultimately discovering the true nature of human connection amidst the shadows of betrayal and deceit. The worst thing is when someone pretends to be your friend, pretending to care about you, and tries to lower your boundaries. When I started learning about narcissism, this was a huge revelation because it creates so much confusion. This covert manipulation is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I was raised as a very good girl in a Catholic family, always striving to help others, but this mindset often landed me in trouble. At university, living with a covert narcissist was a nightmare that fundamentally changed me. Since then, I've adopted a tough persona, almost rejecting the image of being a good person. Paradoxically, this facade grants me a sense of power because it discourages others from using me, even if it means they might not like or want to engage with me. Reflecting on my upbringing, I've come to realize that it unwittingly groomed me for such abuse. Over the years, I've also started to see how religious collectives and societies built upon religious foundations, essentially, most societies, operate through various forms of scapegoating and sacrificial lamb rituals. This insight has deepened my understanding of the dynamics at play in both personal relationships and broader societal structures. After experiencing narcissistic abuse, I became very vulnerable. I found it difficult to build relationships with normal people because I lacked boundaries. Even well-intentioned people would inadvertently cross these boundaries, leaving me feeling confused and entangled. I often wanted to escape. I was such a people pleaser, always there when somebody needed me. I felt I had boundaries because, with ordinary people, I could say, "No, that's enough." But living with a covert narcissist was different. It was just my friend, a girlfriend, but I felt my well-being depended on them. If I didn't do what they wanted, they would try to make my life a misery. Just like that, you try to please them, to stop their behavior, but it never works. My narcissistic friend seemed like a good person who cared about others. However, she often said things like, "I need to be friends with that person because they have something or can do something for me," whether it was related to projects, studies, or other advantages. I didn't like it and felt it was wrong, but I didn't think much about it at the time. She was very entitled, always claiming that everyone else was lucky while she wasn't. She believed that others succeeded only because teachers and professors supposedly didn't like her. She thought she truly deserved good grades and belittled others' achievements by attributing them to luck. She insisted she was a good person and tried to play the cool girl role, pretending she didn't study much. However, she would often say that if she studied more, she would get excellent grades. She had a very high opinion of herself, thinking she was the best of the best. Back then, I didn't understand it, but now I see it clearly. We met in the first year of university and were a part of a bigger group of friends. I ended up living with her at the second year of university because I couldn't get a room in the dorm, so I had to move into a flat with her. This is when it started. I was a threat to an image that she portrayed in our group of friends. It turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. I think her image of being a cool girl was threatened because I saw her studying a lot, despite her claims otherwise. I would go out, have fun, study a little, and then usually pass my exams. She hated that because she was always studying and couldn't maintain her cool girl image. Even though I didn't talk about her, she felt threatened that I might expose her true nature. So, she decided to destroy me. She wanted me to be her servant, and when I refused, she spread false stories about me. These stories were completely untrue or exaggerated, and she shared them with people in our group of friends, others at the university, and anyone else she could reach. This made my life miserable. Everyone was prejudiced against me, and her strong influence made it impossible to change their minds. She played the victim and portrayed me as the abuser, manipulating others into believing that mistreating me was justified. This situation left me feeling isolated and alone, to the point where it became easier to just accept the label of being bad because it helped me survive. Experiencing this abuse and finding myself isolated, with not just the abuser but everyone turning against me, was surreal. It revealed to me the harsh realities of societal dynamics and how easily people can be influenced and manipulated. This ordeal was a profound awakening, showing me the true workings of the world. It opened my eyes to the mechanisms of power and control, which I saw clearly for the first time. What struck me the most was that this behavior wasn't limited to strong narcissistic personalities, it was pervasive. Ordinary people engaged in similar behaviors, albeit in more subtle ways. It felt like a fractal pattern, where manipulation and power dynamics repeated on different scales throughout society. This realization was unsettling and eye-opening, showing me a side of humanity that I had been unaware of before. I really don't want to know all the things she said about me, but what I did hear was truly disgusting. She would go around talking about me, while I chose not to talk about her, because I didn't think it was right. Even though she did plenty of unbelievable things, I believed in keeping it within the house and solving problems privately. I never went around saying bad things about her. While I kept quiet, she kept spreading stories about me, and people believed her. Whenever I tried to talk to someone, I felt they were already prejudiced against me. For example, she would invite someone to our place and then go to bed, leaving me to entertain them. They wouldn't want to go home, and I would end up having to let them stay in my bed because they had no boundaries. She should have told them to leave, but she didn't, and I had to deal with it. And that would happen time and time again. Despite this, she would tell others that I invited these people every day, when in reality, she was the one doing the inviting. I had to clean up her mess, and she spread stories that we were drinking excessively and partying, which made people believe her. Since I didn't defend myself, I ended up looking really bad. She even spied on me. Whenever I went out, she would call people to find out where I went, acting as if she was worried about me. It was so strange and invasive. She criticized everything I did, going to bed too late, breathing too loudly, or putting my things in the freezer, even though almost everything in there was hers. She never apologized and always made it seem like I was in the wrong. Living with her was a nightmare. Cleaning the house and keeping things tidy were normal habits for me. I vacuumed regularly to maintain cleanliness. However, she would occasionally take out the vacuum cleaner and ostentatiously vacuum in front of me, making it seem like a big accomplishment. Despite my regular efforts, she continued to portray me as someone who was lazy or dirty. She trapped me in this false perception not only at home but also in other aspects of my life. She had access to almost every part of my life and polluted all of them with her manipulations. Living in such a toxic environment profoundly changes a person. It's a process where they reshape you into the image they want you to embody. Gradually, you internalize their narrative about you until you become a living manifestation of their perception. It feels like being ensnared in an endless nightmare from which there's no escape. Eventually, you reach a point where you stop fighting and simply surrender, hoping for it to end. You feel utterly powerless against something so overpowering and malevolent that it feels beyond your ability to cope. It's like being ensnared in a spell of dark magic, where the grip tightens with each passing day. What intensifies the torment is the realization that everyone around you is somehow complicit. It's not just the abuser, it's the entire environment that reveals its true nature. It's a harsh reality where those who are targeted as sacrificial lambs or scapegoats see the true face of society, a place where everyone absolves themselves of guilt and impurities by projecting them onto the innocent. You're left isolated and unheard because speaking out would expose the entire system built upon such scapegoating and sacrificial rituals. It's a chilling realization that the very people who should offer support or justice are instead part of perpetuating the injustice. One day, she suggested we talk about things that bothered us so we could address them or find a way around them. I thought it was a great idea. I told her that when she woke up early and switched on the big light, it woke me up and made it hard for me to go back to sleep, which made me nervous. She seemed to agree at the time. But from that day on, she would switch on the big light every single morning, then switch it off and turn on the small light, making it obvious she wanted to bother me. I should have left earlier, since the flat agreement was under my name. I could have ended the lease and left her, but I felt it wasn't the right thing to do at the time. Today, I would definitely do it. People like that don't deserve your sympathy, they don't care about you and only want to destroy you. She also sought to completely erase my own sense of self from my body and being. Whenever I tried to gently steer the conversation away or change the subject, she would instantly turn cold and cruel, making me feel like I lacked empathy. I understood that if I resisted her attempts, this would become yet another damning story about me in everyone's minds. It was a stark choice. Either I allowed her to strip away my identity entirely, becoming wholly consumed by her and her interests, serving her every whim, or she would continue to destroy me from the outside, crafting a perception of me that would paint me as a monstrous figure in the eyes of others. Despite my efforts to maintain my autonomy, she relentlessly pursued her agenda. She resorted to destroying my reputation and embarked on a smear campaign and character assassination. Through calculated manipulation, she fabricated a distorted image of me in the minds of our peers, molding me into the character she wanted others to see. Gradually, this constructed perception began to shape my own self-perception. It was as if she intended to convince me that this distorted portrayal was my true self all along. In reality, it was a cruel manipulation designed to assert control over my identity and narrative. This tactic is a hallmark of narcissistic abuse, manipulating others' perceptions to control and subjugate their victims. When you're surrounded by these distorted perceptions, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish reality from the false narratives imposed upon you. It's a gradual process where the boundaries between who you truly are and who others perceive you to be blur, leaving you vulnerable and profoundly altered. Ultimately, they want you to believe that the persona they've constructed is your authentic self. They wield this illusion to enforce their dominance and maintain their grip on your psyche. It's a harrowing realization when you begin to see through these manipulations, recognizing how deeply they've infiltrated your sense of self and understanding of reality. She simply destroyed me. I was exhausted, constantly tired, and felt swollen all over my body. I was constantly caught in a loop of, what happened? Did I do something wrong? Is she angry with me? Who else is angry with me? Did I do something wrong to that or that person? Did I make a wrong facial expression? These thoughts were programmed in me, to keep me off balance and anxious, unable to function, unable to be a part of society and normal life. I was so drained from this mental torture. I couldn't sleep because the nightmares were so awful that it seemed better not to sleep at all. This exhaustion and constant anxiety took a toll on my grades. They plummeted while I lived with her and even more afterward. I couldn't study or concentrate because there was always a problem. There was nowhere to go for peace, not even a place to talk privately. I felt like there were always flying monkeys, people she had manipulated, listening to my conversations. Everyone was also prejudiced against me. There was no way out, no light in the tunnel, only darkness, and everything I ever loved and built crushing down all around me, and I only looked, helpless, because I could do nothing to save it. Adding to this torment, I also knew that I was spiritually and sexually abused astrally. I reached a point where I prayed not to remember my dreams, and eventually, that happened. I stopped recalling these traumatic experiences during the night. It was the only respite I had, the sole release that allowed me to survive, without succumbing to the overwhelming despair that consumed me. There are many more things I could say about her, but I think I've shared enough. I also faced abuse from other narcissists concurrently, which made my experience even more complex and overwhelming. These individuals supported each other in their efforts to destroy me, creating a web of manipulation and deceit that was difficult to unravel. It's in these moments that you begin to realize the multifaceted nature of narcissistic abuse. It touches upon personal history, the dynamics of gendered abuse, and even broader human history. Narcissistic abuse isn't just a personal affliction, it reveals deeper truths about societal structures and human behavior. It's pervasive throughout history, from personal relationships to societal norms. Experiencing such deep narcissistic abuse has opened my eyes in ways lighter versions of mistreatment never could. The depth of the manipulation and control I endured forced me to confront realities I never imagined. Moreover, the parallels between personal narcissistic abuse and gender inequality are striking. Gender dynamics often mirror the traits of narcissistic abuse on a collective scale. It manifests as a systemic imbalance where collective man abuses collective woman through stories, objectification, smear campaigns, isolation at home, and entrapment in predefined roles of mother and virgin. While acknowledging the complexity of gender dynamics and recognizing that women can also perpetrate abuse against men, the documented history overwhelmingly illustrates a pattern of collective male dominance over women. In fact, this historical narrative is deeply ingrained in societal structures. It underscores how pervasive and entrenched these dynamics are, shaping our understanding of power, control, and identity on both personal and collective levels. Once exposed to this reality, it becomes impossible to return to a naive perception of societal norms. It's as if you've transcended to a new level of awareness, forever changed by the profound truths uncovered through these experiences.